Hello friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and in this video I'm going to be discussing and showing you some projects and ways that we are transitioning out of the pantry challenge and out of winter and into the growing season. So we're going to do a couple canning projects. I'm going to start some seeds and show you my setup for that. It's just a wonderful time of year. You know, January and February, we were doing the pantry challenge, so the pantry got a lot of use. We were constantly cooking from scratch, 3 meals a day out of the pantry. So I took some time this week to do a little bit of organizing and cleaning up. Not only is the cellar a little messy, but the pantry upstairs was, just not only because I'm postpartum and very busy taking care of my new baby, but also just from use. We have been doing a lot of cooking, and I hope you guys enjoyed all of those pantry challenge videos where I showed you the meals that we were making. But now it's time to transition into the growing season. We are a homestead. We aim to grow a lot of our food here ourselves, and that takes a little preparation. Everything has kind of sat and taken a rest over the winter, and things need to be brought back to life. So the weather here in Ohio has been lovely this week. I've been able to get out into the garden a little bit and assess things and start some of my preparations. And I'm going to show you the seeds that I was also able to start. So you guys know that I do a lot of food preservation throughout the year, mainly in the late summer and all through the fall, and even in the winter. I've been showing you some of my preservation projects throughout the pantry challenge even. My policy that I always mention is that whenever I get a batch worth of empty jars, I fill it up and take those full jars down to the pantry instead of just collecting empty jars. And I did that all through the winter, doing projects like canning broth and a couple of the final projects that I'm going to show you that I did with our storage produce here in this video. But now that it's March, it's time for me to stop filling jars and to let empty jars accumulate, because I'm going to need hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 empty jars in order to accomplish all of my preserving goals over this growing season. So this week, I was able to get downstairs and kind of assess how many empty jars we have and make some space to start collecting those jars downstairs. And I did my last few preservation projects that I would like to show you in this video. So you guys know that I do a big bulk citrus order in the month of January, and this year, for the first time, my friend that organizes this citrus order also put in another order for delivery in the month of February. So I did get a second batch of citrus. It was mostly for fresh eating. We did a box of grapefruit and a box of navel oranges, a box of mandarin oranges, and one more box of lemons. You guys know I like to juice lemons. I get a really good deal. One of these boxes of lemons is $38, and so I juice them all down. I also make lemon cleaner out of the peels. We also zest the lemons and freeze dry that to have lemon zest to use in our baking. I get so much out of these lemons for just $38. I decided to do a third box of lemons here in the month of February, and I just this week needed to do the last bit of those. So I juice them up and then I pour that into empty canning jars, and we get those in the freezer. I was really excited to accomplish that project. This is one of the last uses for my empty jars here before, like I said, we're going to need to let those accumulate. So this will make great lemonade all throughout the summer. And the next thing we need to do is start tackling storage produce. So you guys know we weren't just eating canned foods and frozen foods throughout the pantry challenge. We did have fresh carrots available. Those store really well. We had fresh potatoes, fresh apples, of course, the fresh citrus that I mentioned. We also had onion and garlic and squash. And at this time of year, in late February, early March, those fresh foods are starting to look a little rugged and they need to be dealt with. So now is the time for me to go through and start canning that up or freezing it up. So this week I decided to tackle the carrots and the squash, and I'm going to show you how I canned those items in this video. I still need to do my onions and garlic. But I'm putting that off because garlic is my least favorite thing to preserve because it requires me to peel all of that garlic. But thankfully I do have an army of helpers that will get busy with me in the next couple weeks, and we'll get all that garlic peeled and pureed, and we'll probably freeze dry it and turn it into garlic powder. But the first thing I needed to do with these carrots was get them all washed and peeled. For the most part, they're looking pretty good. We had some nasty soft spots that I just cut off. And this is what we have here left to deal with. Canned carrots are a favorite around here. I use them in my beef stew, and I still have a lot of beef stew bases left to use up. So I'm happy to can another batch of carrots to hopefully help make those beef stew meals from my canned bases. We also use our canned carrots to make the carrot souffle recipe that I've shown you in a couple of videos. And then I have a baby that will be eating solids here by the end of the year or before next year's canning season when I would be canning carrots. And so I will use some of these canned softened carrots to puree down and feed my baby Abby her first foods. So to can our carrots, all we need to do is chop them up into pieces. I don't like to make the pieces too small or else through the canning process they kind of disintegrate. So I do rather large chunks, and we just fill our quart jars all the way up to leave approximately 1 inch headspace. You do want to peel your carrots for canning because the peels of your food have the highest risk of having botulism spores on it. So I filled my 7 quart jars, and then I did have some carrots left that I just decided to chop up into carrot slices. And then I'll fill this container of carrots with some water and keep these in the fridge for the kids to snack on. I think these carrots that I cut up only lasted about 18 hours before they were all gone. So like I said, we have our quart jars full of carrots. I've got my canning helper here, and we're going to get busy finishing this canning project. We are just going to raw pack these jars. I am taking them to the sink and filling them with water straight. It's our well water straight from the tap. I'm just going to jiggle the jars around to release any air bubbles that might be trapped between the carrot slices. And then I'm going to take my 4 jars canning lids and get those on the jars. These are my favorite canning lids, and if you guys need to purchase some lids in order to get prepared for the upcoming canning season, I would do that now and use the link in this video description to get 10% off your jars or your lids. This is the time of year to do that. You want to be prepared. You don't want to be searching for lids during the canning season when they're hard to come by or could be out of stock. So we processed those in the pressure canner for 90 minutes. And when we were done, we have wonderful jars of canned carrots that, like I said, I will be using in beef stew, carrot souffle, or for baby food. The next project that I needed to accomplish was dealing with our storage squash. This is Canada crookneck squash. I showed you guys harvesting these last fall and how I had cured them and got them ready for storage in the basement. We ate a lot of these fresh. We made butternut squash soup. We used them to make pumpkin muffins and pumpkin breads, and this is what I have left. They were stored dirty. They weren't washed before putting into storage, and that helps extend the lifespan of them. So they did need a very thorough washing. I actually scrubbed them with a dish scrubber and soap in the sink. And some of these are looking a little rugged, so we'll have to cut out the bad parts, but there is plenty of squash here to still be enjoyed and used up. So just like with the carrots, the first step is going to be peeling these, and I find the easiest way to do it is to just use a knife. I know some people use a vegetable peeler and have good results, and I would recommend using a vegetable peeler for this part of the squash right here, the rounded part at the end of the squash. And I only canned up one of those round ends before I decided that, you know what, it's a whole lot easier to peel the neck part, the long part, the straight part of the squash. And so that is primarily what I'm going to use for the canning. And then the round bulbous ends of the squash, I'm going to end up cooking up to turn into some fresh puree to use for baking projects throughout the week. So we're just going to chop the necks off, like I mentioned. Get those peeled with the knife and then chunk them up just like we did with the carrots. And the process is exactly the same for canning this squash. Now, I know a lot of people will puree their squash and can it, and people have great results with that, but that method is not recommended by the National Center for Home Food Preservation. The squash or pumpkin puree can be very dense, and the heat process for pressure canning will not always penetrate through the center of that puree because it's so thick. And so that is why it is advised that you chunk your squash to can it versus pureeing it and canning it. But do whatever you like. Some people prefer to do the puree. I follow the National Center for Food Preservation process for this and like to chunk mine up. The great thing about canning foods that are high in vitamin A, beta carotene, like this squash and the carrots that I showed you, is that the canning process actually makes that vitamin more bioavailable. Certain vitamins, like vitamin C, are completely destroyed by the heat of the canning or the cooking process. But vitamin A actually is enhanced through this process. So I love canning these types of foods, not only for the nutritional benefits, but also for the convenience of it. Because if I want to make something like a butternut squash soup, these jars of canned squash are already pre-cooked. So I can just drain the water out and puree the squash down, and it's ready to go versus having to worry about roasting my squash at the time that I want to make the soup. So a lot of the canning that I do is purely about convenience, and the nutritional benefit is just a bonus. So we're going to get our rings on these jars, and we're going to put these also in the pressure canner, and these are going to process for 90 minutes. Now, 90 minutes is a rather long time, so I had a little time in the kitchen while I was babysitting the canner and getting it up to pressure, and I decided to tackle the rest of the squash that didn't fit in jars. As I mentioned, I cut the kind of bulbous parts up, added a little water to the bottom of a pan, and went ahead and roasted those in the oven. Then we could just simply scoop out the flesh. This saved me from having to peel all of those parts of the squash that are a little more difficult to peel. I could just scoop it straight out of the skin. And then I went ahead and pureed this up with my immersion blender and used these to make pumpkin bread later on in the week. So it was just nice to have some puree ready to go when I wanted to bake with it later on. So it's kind of sad not to have any more fresh squash available down in the pantry, but it is super convenient to have all of that squash preserved up and ready to go for easy meals, because things are going to get busy here as we start getting into gardening season and I start working on prepping the garden. So I'm going to need some easy meals, and it's going to be great that I can use these jars. As I mentioned, gardening season is upon us, so I'm going to talk a little bit about seeds and starting seeds. So one of the lessons that I learned in the Pantry Challenge is that I really need to focus on growing less varieties, less of the fun and whimsical things, and more of just the basics that really produce for us and will fill the pantry shelves. So I got out my seed collection and kind of did an inventory and determined the things that I am going to grow this year and the items that I'm probably going to skip. Just because you guys know I am limited in my garden space. We downsized our garden many years ago just to make it easier for me. You know, I wear a lot of hats and have a lot of things going on, and I don't have the time to devote to maintaining the garden like I used to when my children were a little younger and we had a little less going on in our lives. So this year I plan to have the children help me a lot more in the garden, but I also am just going to grow a lot less and just less varieties, but more of the things that we actually love. So I went through the seeds, got them all organized, and made some lists of what needs to be started indoors, because it is that time of year. So Benjamin was my helper, and he's going to help me get started. I'll show you the packets of the varieties that I'm planting as we are planting them. But we focused on peppers, and we did some loofah, and we did parsley. this week, and then in the next couple weeks we're also going to need to do our tomatoes. So we are they changed the gardening zones over the last couple of years. We're technically in zone 6. Sometimes the weather feels more like zone 5. We plant out into our garden usually Mother's Day weekend. That's when I feel safe doing that. And so if you count back 10 weeks from the date that we're going to plant out, it is that time to get our pepper seeds started, because that's what you want to do. You want to start your peppers 10 weeks before your last frost date. I'm only doing 2 varieties of sweet bell peppers this year. My favorite are the yellow monster peppers. Those are the ones you guys always hear me talking about. They are huge. They grow massive peppers that taste wonderful and always just grow prolifically for me. So I did the majority of my peppers were that, and then I did a California Wonder variety of just a regular bell pepper that will turn into a red sweet pepper. And then in terms of hot peppers, I'm only doing a few cayenne plants. I did a few sweet bell pepper plants, and I did a couple jalapenos, and that is it. That's all we're doing for peppers this year. In the past, I've tried really fun varieties of hot peppers and canned a bunch of sauces, and I have a lot of hot sauce still downstairs in the pantry to be used up, so there was no point in me wasting garden space by growing more of that this year. So the hot peppers that I am growing are just primarily to can up some of the salsas and like spicy soup bases that I like to do. We also started our loofah. And if you don't know what loofah is, it's a variety of gourd or squash that if you let it grow completely to maturity and dry out, it creates a loofah sponge. And I like to use the loofah sponges for soap making. I also use them to wash our eggs. It's like a nice biodegradable soft scrubber that can help you get the messes off of your eggs, and then you're not having to use some kind of rag that you would need to wash after you're done getting all of that muck off the eggs. So once the loofah has run its course and needs to be tossed, it can just go straight into the chicken bucket and into the compost and be biodegradable. But loofah has a really long lifespan. It takes a long time to reach maturity, so I start my loofah seeds with my pepper seeds, and that gives it enough time to fully grow. We're also growing some parsley. It's one of my favorite herbs, and I just wanted to get a head start on that. I had some extra cups to fill and just decided to pick the parsley. So Benjamin here with his sword on his back, he's here protecting me and helping me get all of those cups watered. And then, like I said, I need to dig the rest of my reusable solo cups out of the garage, and we will plant our tomato seeds here in a couple of weeks, and I'll show you what varieties I'm choosing to focus on. Like I mentioned, we are just doing basics this year. Here is my grow stand setup. I have it by the wood stove. Peppers need a lot of heat in order to germinate, so I find that this is the best place here. I hate having the clutter in my dining room like this, but it really is the spot that gives me the best results. So now we have added watering our seeds to the daily list of chores. Other than that, at this time of year, we're just hitting the books and trying to get as much schooling done as possible. We now take summer breaks with the older kids. With the little ones, we do school year-round. And I will be taking a little bit of a spring break here, probably in early April, in order to get a lot of garden work done. And since we took a long break in January when the baby came, I need to get as much schooling done with little ones as possible just to kind of get caught up and then allow myself to take that break as needed to get the garden in the ground. So one of my other tasks that I'm focusing on is some kitchen maintenance. I have been using my kitchen like a workhorse over the last couple of months, just lots of baking and lots of cooking, and all of my appliances and my butcher block counters, my pots and pans, they all need a little bit of TLC. So in next week's video, I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to be doing a lot of that kitchen maintenance. We are going to fix my butcher block counters. I'm going to be showing you the most effective method for cleaning up all of my pots and pans from the grease stains that are on them. And we're going to be cleaning some appliances and things and show you how to do kitchen maintenance. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that, and I'll be back with that next week. For now, I'm just going to get back to taking care of baby Abby. She is such a blessing. We're having so much fun having another baby around. All the kids are absolutely in love with her, as am I, obviously. And we're just going to hit the books and do as much school with the children as possible. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. We will see you next week. And until then, have a great one, friends. Bye.